I thought to share something about Lama Yeshe. And the reason I wanted to share about Lama is because is not so much because Lama was the founder of Universal Wisdom Education, which he was, but because the person of Lama, in my experience, was the complete embodiment of Universal Wisdom Education. Just by how he lived his life and how he related to others and how he understood us and how he gave his life for us in every moment and in every action. That was for me what communicated in the most complete way what Universal Wisdom Education is. Lama's way of being with other people was total. He was totally, utterly available to whoever was in front of him, whoever he was speaking with, whoever he was in contact with, in such a way that it was as if he became no one and you became everything in that moment. But also in that moment was this experience that this person talking to you, that Lama's talking to you, understood you completely to the total depths of who you were. And who we are as human beings, as frail and human beings, is a combination of, on the one hand, sadness and problems and difficulties and pain and confusion, and on the other hand, this extraordinary potential for love and compassion and connection with others and being there for others. And that being there for others completely and totally was what Lama, for me, embodied. And so when he began to talk about this project, which was originally called Universal Education, then my understanding of what he was communicating was to help us become able to be like him. Not because he held himself in high regard, but to become like him in the sense of being able to really be there and help others. We all have pain and suffering and difficulties. And our confusion, especially our confusion about ourselves, about who and what we are. So many times we go through life and, each day we feel, am I okay? Am I doing a good job? Am I being a good person? Or we feel, even we're not even asking the questions, but we feel I'm not a good person. I'm blocked. I'm limited. I can only do this or that. I can only, live in this limited, sad, problematic kind of way. I don't like myself. Maybe others don't like me. This is very painful, and yet we go through life so often putting on a happy face, that isn't genuine, that isn't real, but we're trying, we're trying to make the best. We're trying to be happy, but yet we carry these problems and pains and suffering within us. And Lama was this embodiment of, first of all, a person who understood us deeply, understood those problems, and had this amazing toolbox of methods to help us overcome our self-image that can be so destructive. To help us discover that behind all of that stuff, all of those thoughts that are so hurtful to ourselves and to others, within that is this incredible repository of love and kindness, and as Andy was talking about before, this wonderful, clear, pure nuclear energy of our minds. And so in universal education, not only was Lama helping us to help ourselves, but he was helping us to become able to help others, to open our hearts in order to be able to be there for others. So we don't, part of that negative self-concept that we carry around with us is what keeps us from connecting, keeps us from relating to others, keeps us from feeling, feeling both our own reality, our own deeper reality of kindness and love and openness, but also from relating to others and making a connection, a real connection, so that we can share, but also so that we can be of some help. For me, Lama's person was the embodiment of how to be, how to do that, what we're trying to reach. And so that inspiration of how he was with me, how he was with others, that both recognized our difficulties, our problems, our deep, issues and confusions that bring us suffering, accepted all of those totally in a way that often we don't accept ourselves. We think that we're bad, we're imperfect, we're not even worth saving. So that acceptance gave such incredible space to the people that he met to start to learn to accept themselves, to love themselves, and to come in contact then through all of that garbage, through all of that black self-image, to dispel that and come in contact with what's deeper, what's of who we are much more deeply inside, beyond those limitations. And that's where joy is. That's where, I don't want to say, part of me doesn't want to say happiness, because so many times we, happiness is something temporary and momentary and fleeting, but something deeper, a deeper sense of peace and satisfaction and joy. I feel that what universal education, universal wisdom education now is trying to do, because of Lama's great inspiration, is to embody that incredible concern for others, one by one by one. To open our hearts and to provide us with the tools, the methods, the wisdom and understanding that enable us to do the inner work, so we can open our hearts, really open our hearts, both to ourselves, and then by opening our hearts to ourselves, open our hearts to others, and help, and really help, not superficially, but to help deeply, to help with wisdom, through real understanding of how we as human beings work, what our human condition is, how we contribute to our difficulties, and how we can extricate ourselves from our difficulties, from our problems, but most of all from our confusion. That our confusion is what is our core hindrance, our core obstacle to really being able to fulfill ourselves as human beings and to achieve joy for ourselves, but more than that, to understand that achieving, helping others to achieve joy is how we ourselves really find meaning and joy in life. There's a little article that is available that's entitled Mahayana. And this was an article that Lama actually wrote about universal education in the beginning, because the name universal education, when he gave the name universal education, then this was a translation into English of the concept of Mahayana. Mahayana being a Sanskrit term, Maha meaning great or vast, and Yana meaning vehicle or path. And so great, vast, Lama translated into universal, and path or vehicle he translated into education. And so, and Mahayana is this great attitude of concern for the well-being of others, rather than thinking always me, my happiness, what I need in every moment, to broaden our perspective, to acknowledge that we are all in this world together, that we are all connected, and to think, well, what about everybody else? We are all one family. Whether we're human beings or ants or animals, speaking of which, we are all one family. And so when harm comes to others, then harm comes to all of us. When happiness comes to others, then happiness comes to all of us. If we take care of others, then at the same time we take care of ourselves. And so at the essence, at the core of universal wisdom education is this attitude of concern, this open-hearted attitude of caring for others. And this is done, however, through wisdom, through understanding. And so we have this new manifestation, this new name of universal wisdom education that helps us to remember that our universal attitude, our concern, our caring attitude, and our open heart is manifested and is enhanced and deepened by our clear, deep understanding of how we as human beings function, how we exist in the world, and how joy and well-being actually come about through overcoming our confusion. Lama Yeshe began speaking about this project in approximately 1974. And he began talking about it at the beginning with Max Matthews, who was known as Mummy Max, who was an American teacher in Kathmandu, who became one of Lama's benefactors, and who also taught at the American school there. Unfortunately, the material from those talks and conversations was lost over the years. And Max, at a certain point, got involved in doing business to support the monastery of Kopan in Nepal, and so she didn't continue with this project. So I came on the scene around 1976, at which point Lama began talking to me about this, and I had expressed my own interest in children's education, both children's Dharma education, but also this bigger idea that Lama had of making Buddhist wisdom and Buddhist methods available through education to children and adults of any religious leaning or no religious leaning at all. So in 1981, we began to organize an international conference on universal education, this name that Lama had just given to this project. And Lama talked about, at that time, his vision that all of Buddhism could be made available to all of the world's people in a form that anyone could understand, because the wisdom of Buddhism was talking about the reality of how our minds work, how we suffer, how we have difficulties and confusion on the one hand, and how we can overcome that in order to live a more meaningful and more joyful life. Lama was convinced that every teaching of Buddhism could be rendered into a language that would make it accessible and practical for anyone. And so from this vision came the beginning of this project. During this conference, which happened in October of 1982, then we were also privileged to have His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who opened the conference for us, as well as other educators who shared some of their methods of helping children and adults to gain a greater understanding of the mind, of the human condition, and how we become better human beings. From there, then Lama continued to help us in many, many ways and to refine his vision of universal education, talking with us about the relationship of universal education to the world and to the world's educational systems, talking to us about how to actually put this project into practice through, first, if possible, developing materials, clear written materials that then could be used to help us to train people, train facilitators and teachers and educators. And then those people, together with that material, would be able to go out into the world into different kinds of educational situations, including schools, and be able to enact universal education in that way. I think one of the most special things that Lama taught us about, especially within the context of universal wisdom education, is what it means to be a teacher. And I think it's important, first of all, to remember that that when Lama talked about being a teacher, he wasn't necessarily talking about a person standing in the front of a classroom of children or adults. He was talking about all of us as teachers, because in every interaction that we have with every other human being on this planet, whenever we have contact, we are transmitting something. We are sharing something and demonstrating something by how we act and how we relate and how we communicate. And so in that greater sense, Lama, even though we use this word teacher, Lama was also teaching us and talking to us about how to be a good person, how to be the best possible human being. And so I wanted to share two things which from Lama's life and that he did or said at different times. One is this: teachers have an enormous responsibility. They are the protectors of the human mind. By nurturing and developing the minds of their students, they're actually affecting the way the world is. So this obviously puts a great responsibility on us to remember how responsible through our actions and our interactions we are for the effects that all of that has on the world and on others around us. But in contrast to that, and perhaps as a balance to that, there's another thing that Lama said once, and in this particular instance he was talking to a translator who was translating for him, but for me, I think it's incredibly applicable to this same context of understanding our role as human beings in our interactions with others and how to be an effective teacher in every moment. So in this particular situation, Lama was giving a teaching at a university, and the folks who had invited him had obtained a professional translator to translate for him into the local language, which I believe was German. And so Lama's language was very flamboyant and very spontaneous and, very alive and communicative, and always when he was talking to others. And this person next to him, this professional translator, was being very somewhat dry and academic and, very intellectual. And so the entire spirit of what Lama was trying to convey and communicate was being lost in translation. And so not very long after this talk began, Lama very gently leaned down to this person next to him and said, "Please, you have to think of yourself as nobody. If you think of yourself as somebody, you won't be able to do your job properly." And that's all he said. But for me, I really take this in as, on the one hand, as teachers, as role models, as human beings, we have incredible responsibility for the effect that we have in the world. And on the other hand, I'm nobody. As soon as I think of myself as somebody, my ability to be a good human being, to do an effective interview, to talk with others, to be a good teacher, is diminished. It's compromised. It becomes confused and muddy. And so, to me, these two short things together kind of both embody universal wisdom education and embody Lama Yeshe and who he was and what he was conveying to us. So my name is Connie Miller. I've been involved with universal wisdom education from the beginning, from about 1977 or so. And thank you very much.